connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is living into the future. Most of us live our lives through echoes of the past, but what would it look like to live into the future, to what's emerging? So that's going to be today's conversation. Should be fun. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine that oxygen nourishing all your cells, all your organs, coursing through your blood, enlivening and invigorating you. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Rosalind. Good morning. It's great to have you here with us, and welcome to everyone else who's joining us. Today, we're talking about living into the future and what would that look like? Because so much of our lives is dictated by our experience of the past, who we are, who we believe ourselves to be, right? How we believe the world to be, what we believe our circumstances to be. We're really living echoes of the past. And what we tend to do is we tend to take the past and put it in front of us, project it in front of us, and then live into that projected past of who we are, how we are, what we are, all of these preconceptions. And certainly there's, without those preconceptions, or at least some of them, we wouldn't know how to navigate the world, right? We've learned ways to navigate the world. However, while it can be very freeing to have a sense of how to navigate the world, it can also be very constraining and limiting. And so there's an art form that I'm imagining of being able to be informed by the past without necessarily being entirely subject to it. And this is the tricky challenge, to find a way to essentially see the water that we're swimming in. Um, they say a fish in water doesn't know that they're in water, right? That's just the reality of their world. And that's so very true about our experiences as well, is we're not necessarily conscious of the influences and the environment, the nuances of our environment that dictate our experience. And it's not just that the environment dictates our experience. I'm including our perceptions and interpretations as part of that notion of environment. So, what would it look like to live into the future, into the emergent future, where we're not using or we're not relying exclusively in any case on our understanding of the past in order to interpret the potentials of the future? Because we're in an unprecedented time where we're actually confronting circumstances that humanity, to our knowledge anyway, has never confronted, has never had to address, with the climate threats and earth changes that we're experiencing. This is unprecedented, at least in our history, our known history. And the political climate, certainly there have been precedents for that. We have, there have been other times in history where similar sorts of factionalism and polarizing views have existed. But again, we have a moment in time where we have an unprecedented communication capability where we can communicate around the world in fractions of moments. And so that is an influence that is new. And the emergence of AI is also something that is new. And potentially our technological capabilities are new, although there are rumors of highly technological past civilizations. The combination of all these elements is new to our historical awareness. And so, given that these things are new and unprecedented in our experience, we don't really have solutions from the past that are applicable to our current circumstance. So the question arises, how do we address these circumstances, address the challenges of these moments when we have essentially no reference point or no reliable reference point? And so how do we make how do we generate new ideas, new responses, new ways to engage with life and its challenges when we have no precedent? And what I'm seeing actually that's very fascinating is, and I don't know if it's just because of the specialization of my own lens toward the world, but one of the things that I'm noticing is a much greater reverence and curiosity about nature and nature's way of interacting with all these kinds of challenges, where nature has found ways to adapt to extreme weather conditions. Nature has found ways to evolve and transform itself. And so I'm noticing that there's more more reverence for nature, more reverence for an acknowledgement of indigenous wisdom from peoples who have inhabited the planet peacefully and in greater harmony for eons. And the notion of living into the future rather than out of the past, I think requires a greater listening, a recognition that, first of all, we don't have the answers. That as much as we would like to arrogantly believe that we know how everything works and that we have the answers and we can fix it, right? We're in this fix it mode, like there's something broken, rather than this is all maybe part of a grander natural cycle or evolution, that that we can cultivate a humility that allows us to listen more closely, that allows us to step beyond the limits of our own invention to connect to a greater system, to recognize that it's not necessarily a mechanical universe. That's actually something else that I'm noticing emerging, is a curiosity about greater systems, recognizing systems rather than parts. And I think we've been very concentrated on components, thinking about a machine and looking at components and believing that those components were replaceable, and in some cases they are, but rather than looking at the dynamics of a system, looking at parts in the past rather than process. And so recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that there's more going on there than just mechanics, and that there are many influences at play within any given system. And there's systems and subsystems, but they all relate to each other. So in this notion, or in this quest to live into the emerging future, one of the things that we as individuals can do is cultivate our ability to listen, to just find a place of quiet and allow what's there to be there, so that it can stimulate some kind of awareness, some kind of responsiveness. So we talk about inspiration a lot, that the inspiration comes from being. And part of this notion of being really is listening, is presence. When we're present, we are able to, and I don't just mean listening by hearing, I mean being present to our experience of sensation, of what we typically call intuition. That there's another dimension of intelligent awareness that isn't part of our normal, in big air quotes, normal conscious thought, that we get to cultivate these deeper senses. With indigenous cultures, they have notably had a deep connection to the greater intelligence of nature, of matter, of the vitality that is at the root of all being. And I used to cringe at the notion of an animate universe. And what I'm finding is that it's kind of the only thing that makes sense, at least to me at this point. I mean, and I've read physics stuff that supports that notion, and certainly indigenous wisdom and of metaphysical things, but also experiential things that people have been recording through the centuries, that there's something more going on here than we are able to perceive, that is an intelligence perhaps beyond our own. And Rosalind says, I'm inspired by Gaia TV and EWN. It motivates me to dive deeper into books where information from someone's work is distilled into pages. It could provide a new operating system, belief systems, and ways of being. 100%, Rosalind. I mean, new ways of thinking. And it's interesting how new ideas are first laughed at and ridiculed. And at some point, they're taken seriously enough to be a threat. So then people try to squash those new ideas, and ultimately those new ideas become mainstream. They become integrated, and we can see that with trends in culture and trends in science, and um, it's very, very interesting, where just the notion that the earth that the earth revolves around the sun was a radical notion that people tried to suppress, and tortured people who believed in that truth. And so now it's just, of course, that's the way it is. Now that's accepted as fact. But at one time, it was heresy to mention that fact, or to propagate or promote that fact. So people that, up until now, I guess, people that have kind of lived into the emergent future, who have made discoveries that were a break from the past, have been vilified. People who don't conform have been made examples of throughout history, right? And yet, when there are enough people to to support a notion, that's when the tides start changing. So Rosalind says the universe is something out there. The way I experience it, expansiveness, is in my chair through meditation. And that's, oh, I love that you said that, because that's an age old philosophical argument. Is there a there? You know, is there anything really truly out there, or is this all a projection of my consciousness? And I wonder, what if the answer is yes, all of the above, all of the above, that whatever the there is not necessarily something we have access to. And um and our experience, certainly our experience of the world, is a projection of our consciousness. And I guess we can argue that to different degrees, but yeah, that's the foundational question. And that's always been my question, is what's real and what's not real. It's hard to be able to discern that. And certainly if you're looking for reality with a capital R. So living into the future. But we could even get into the conversation of, does the future even exist, right? But for our purposes today, we're just talking about finding a true responsiveness in a moment, you know, to be on this plane. Or maybe it's a convergence. Maybe it's a convergence of this plane with the plane of consciousness. Maybe it's that liminal space between our individuation and our cosmic existence. And that's where the potentials, or the new potentials for humanity, for the nature, for the world, maybe that's where they exist, is in that space between individuation and oneness. That space where we have our own individual expression and are also connected with the universal intelligence in a more active way. So Rosalind says tapping into one's intuition to guide the next step. Exactly. So what we're looking at is, I mean, up until kind of this time in our culture anyway, intuition has been demonized almost, or spoken of in a very dismissive kind of way. But the thing is that our intuition allows for an integration of our conscious senses and also the information that we are absorbing and sensing that we're not necessarily conscious of. And so our intuition is processing all this stuff, or our being is processing all this multi-dimensional information and synthesizing it and coming up with what we call intuition, because we can't really explain it. But the thing is, we're sensing all kinds of information all the time. that we don't necessarily consciously name. Like we can feel the shift of the weather. We feel the moisture in the air. When we're talking to someone, we can see the dilation of the pupils or moisture on their skin, even though it doesn't necessarily register in a conscious way. So we're getting all this information that our awareness is processing, and then we come up with a gut feeling, or we come up with an intuition, or we come up with some kind of knowing about something. And we tend to dismiss it in many ways, when in fact, it is very often the synthesis of information that we just couldn't consciously parse. And I think that this notion of living into the emergent future is calling upon us to listen and cultivate that intuition in a deeper way. That it's that greater intelligence that we have access to, that greater intelligence that is an expression of ourselves and our connection, that can guide us into a healthier future. So I saw something recently that really struck me powerfully, and that was, ask nature what is needed in this moment of environmental and climate kind of crisis. Ask nature. Nature knows what is needed to move forward, to evolve, to transform. And one of the ways that we can connect more deeply with nature in asking nature is through that deeply, deeply intuitive sense. So we get to be cultivating our expanded senses. I think that's what it comes down to as far as living into the emergent future, that we get to expand our awareness of our multi-sensory experience and not limit ourselves to what we consider to be our five senses. So anyway, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living, and to please like and follow the EWN Facebook page and YouTube channel and my YouTube channel. The links are in the description. And as always, it's just such a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend these morning musings together. So until next time, so much love to you.